Now we'll go to item A, which is receive a report on the Crestmoor 1 neighborhood streetlight outage and provide direction to develop options for temporary and permanent solutions.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as my colleagues are joining us at the table here, I would like to give you just a very brief overview of how this presentation is going to be made tonight. Unfortunately, and literally up to the point where I was driving to the meeting tonight, information was evolving, and I received yet new information about the status of the streetlights in the Crestmoor neighborhood. I would just suggest that what you're going to hear tonight is that this has been a very unusually and frustratingly complicated and difficult series of events that have unfolded in a very challenging period of time in the work effort that Ted Chapman, our Streets and Stormwater Division manager, has undertaken to deal with troubleshooting and trying to resolve the various problems that are continuing to result in a major streetlight outage in the Crestmoor 1 neighborhood. Ted is going to give an overview of the status of the situation, the work that's been done by staff and in partnership with PG&E, and the current up-to-the-minute status of what's going on. Next, Jimmy Tan will give us a overview of staff's current recommended next steps for longer-term and temporary solutions to the lighting situation in the neighborhood. And because the situation has been evolving, there's been so many changing circumstances over the last several days in particular, we were unable to give you anything other than a very sort of generic overview in a written report that you didn't receive until today. But that report in particular does not include specific recommendations. We're now in a position that at the conclusion of these reports that we feel it will be necessary to ask you to add by emergency at 4/5 vote of the City Council an action item on tonight's agenda that we literally did not anticipate until this morning, to authorize some expenditure authority for the city manager in order to continue a more detailed system analysis and investigation and potentially begin some additional immediate next steps towards repair of the system. So at the conclusion of the reports, the city attorney and I will come back with some additional comments about that process and the specifics of that recommendation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I'm Ted Chapman of the Streets and Storm Division Manager for the Public Services Department. I would like to give you an update on the existing streetlight outage that has been in effect in the Crestmoor neighborhood since October the 23rd. The outage that we are experiencing is frustrating not only for our residents but for us as well. We're working hard for our residents' interests, but haven't experienced an outage of this nature in the past. It has been extremely difficult and challenging to get the streetlights back into operation. The area affected is located in the Crestmoor neighborhood, as you see on the slide. These streetlights were installed in the 1950s. All of the streetlights within the streets identified with a green line are currently out of service. There's a total of 57 streetlights within the area that are out. The power for these lights are supplied through an RO or a regulated output circuit. PG&E owns and operates the transformers and the equipment that supply the power, and the city owns the conduits, wires, and streetlights. The city has 9 RO systems throughout the city. RO systems provide power to each light by connecting each streetlight in series with a single electric wire, similar to a strand of Christmas lights, except the power supplied is high voltage and very dangerous. When there is a short in the circuit, the RO supplies more and more voltage as required by the system. This causes any weak item to fail, such as a fixture or any old wire or damaged wires. A single light being out will not affect the system unless it is shorted out. The slide shows the transformer located near the intersection of Crestmoor Drive and Trenton, which provides up to 30,000 watts into the RO circuit. In order for the RO circuit to be evaluated and repaired, PG&E assistance is required to de-energize so high voltage will not be present during the investigation work. PG&E has been very cooperative in the past 3 weeks and has provided staff to help de-energize and re-energize the RO systems every time I have called them, which has been almost every day. The first failure on this system was reported on the 23rd, as I had stated earlier. The street light at 130 Alpine Way was sparking at the fixture head. Our electrical contractor, Flowers Electric, was called in after PG&E de-energized the RO. Flowers removed this street light from the system, meaning they bypassed it at the base of the pole that was shorted out. This has been a standard practice in the past for us to repair a failed fixture until that fixture can be replaced, usually within a week or so. This particular light, after it was bypassed by Flowers Electric, PG&E then re-energized the system and they left. They thought that all was okay because at that point, the lights right at the RO came back on. Driving into work the next day, the lights at Princeton and San Bruno Avenue were out. That morning, I started gathering information early as to what had happened that Friday night from our standby crew, our electrical contractor, and PG&E's staff, who were the ones that de-energized and re-energized the system. We also notified PD of this outage to make them aware of the affected area. That evening, we started assessing which of the streetlights were on and off and testing to see if we had any wattage on the wires at the locations where the lights were out. The next day, we coordinated with PG&E, who confirmed that the RO was functioning correctly. They helped de-energize the circuit so we could perform additional tracing and tests to narrow down the damaged areas. We excavated several locations in the Alpine Way, Rosewood Drive, and Lexington Drive in an effort to investigate these areas that we suspected had failures on the wiring. In addition to this work, we checked all the suspected fixture heads and re-spliced any suspected wire splices at the base of the poles and pull boxes within this area. The excavations revealed burned wires within the conduits in Lexington or on Lexington and also Rosewood Drive. Here are some of the pictures of the burned wires. I have brought with me tonight just a couple of the burned wires that we were able to remove from the conduit, and a fixture that was removed at Trenton and Dover Court. Some of the other burned wires were not even able to be removed because they had welded themselves to the conduit. After further assessment, we determined that there were multiple failures of the system. We consulted with City of Daly City on their experience with assessing RO failures. They have 15 RO systems in their streetlight network and had failures in the past as well. They suggested a new technique to test the installation on the wires for shorts and recommended us to take amp readings on the system when it's energized. We performed additional testing on October the 30th using a megger, which is a testing device to test the insulation on the wiring itself, looking for any grounded wires. The system tested to some normal extent and was re-energized that evening. However, when we went out that night, we found wires shorting out in an area that had been working the night before and that had previously passed the megger test. This slide shows the various things the city has performed and repaired as of last Friday. We have bypassed 5 poles that have been grounded out or burned, replaced approximately 700 feet of wire at 4 different locations, repaired approximately 50 splices, removed 3 lights on Alpine Way from the RO circuit due to burned wires running up the middle of San Bruno Avenue. I am working with PG&E to try and have these 3 lights put on a parallel circuit that is fed from the low voltage lines in the backyard. We also replaced 2 additional fixtures that showed a possible failure on them. We have also coordinated with PG&E on the replacement of the transformer, which PG&E completed the work yesterday. The system was re-energized and checked last night. Unfortunately, our challenges and frustrations of troubleshooting and repairing this old and antiquated system hit an all-time high last night. All of the streetlights were out. We tested the lines coming off the RO, and it had a low voltage reading coming from the RO, and this was reported to PG&E, and they de-energized the system that last night. Today, PG&E also disconnected the wires running down the pole from the RO so we could test them along with retesting the entire system, looking for shorts in the system. We did find an additional shorted wires running across San Bruno Avenue. Excavations will have to be completed to be able to replace these wires and possibly replace conduit that runs north and south across San Bruno Avenue. This concludes my portion of the presentation regarding the status update, and I will turn it over to Jimmy to provide some information on possible solutions and temporary measures.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Good evening, honorable mayors and members of the City Council. As Ted mentioned, the streetlights outage issue has been a real challenge to resolve. We received numerous complaints from frustrated residents through telephone and emails wanting to know why it's taking so long. We've contacted them back as quickly as we can to let them know of the situation and status. And the city website also has information regarding the outage. We understand the residents' concerns about public safety within the neighborhood and are doing the best we can to resolve the issue. The police department is also aware of the outage and have increased patrols in the neighborhoods as well. And these RO systems were installed back in the 50s, are antiquated and difficult to maintain and operate. We're also dealing with high voltage electricity, which is dangerous for our staff, electrical contractor, and PG&E who are performing or helping performing the investigation. And given the recent very disappointing result, even though we've been working continuously and diligently to identify and resolve the problems, we haven't been able to conclusively identify the issue, and there's no current estimate when the streetlights will be back online. In order to get the streetlights in operation again, we evaluate several temporary and permanent solutions. The permanent solution is to convert the streetlights from the RO series circuit into a parallel circuit, and this process involves hiring a consultant to perform detailed design of the new electrical network that includes installing new conduits, new rewiring of all the streetlights. Then the application, along with the fee, needs to be submitted to PG&E for the new services, and PG&E will then perform the design for this new parallel electrical network. Once the plans and specifications are finalized, we'll advertise for bid. hire a contractor to perform the work and coordinate with PG&E to perform the new electrical connections. The estimated cost for this design and construction for this Crestmoor neighborhood alone is approximately $500,000, with an anticipated completion schedule of approximately up to 2 years. This schedule is conservative, but it was derived from discussion with the county of San Mateo. They recently went through a process of converting 54 streetlights within one of their RO circuit recently. The city chooses to convert all the 9 RO circuits. The cost is approximately $3.5 to $4 million. There are some temporary solutions that we're looking into as well. Since it's difficult to estimate when all the streetlights will be back in operation, staff explored the possibility of providing temporary floodlights within the neighborhood. The floodlights are similar to what you see on the road during night construction. It's operated using diesel-powered engines and are susceptible to high-level noise. This is one temporary option to provide illumination for pedestrians and cars traveling through the neighborhood. And the cost to rent 25 floodlights is approximately $22,000 a month and requires a minimum of 2 weeks lead time. Staff is also looking into the possibility of providing temporary power from secondary power source to some of these streetlights in the neighborhood. The secondary power source is low voltage, 120 to 240 volts, that is used to supply power to the existing homes there. For this option, we need cooperation and assistance from PG&E to perform the connections. The city will need to work together with PG&E to determine which streetlights location can be provided with secondary power source. PG&E will also need to determine whether their secondary power network is sufficient to provide the additional power to the streetlights. The timeline to get this temporary service is unknown, since the majority of the work required for design and connection is dependent on PG&E schedule. We haven't given up on this issue. We're currently also seeking assistance from another electrical contractor that has experience in evaluating RO outage issues. The contractor has worked with both PG&E and City of Daly City in the past to assess their RO outage issues, and we've already contacted them today and discussed with them what we're dealing with, and we're coordinating with them to be on the site as soon as possible so that they can help investigate. Then I'll turn it back over to the city manager.
So it's that recommendation that we are seeking the City Council's authority to pursue. Unfortunately, staff advises me that the detailed analysis and assessment and evaluation of permanent solutions, whether it be, as the acting director indicated, a conversion to a parallel system, which is a longer-term, fairly expensive proposition based on our estimates, or whether there is a reliable fix to the RO circuitry that would allow us to continue to rely on that system for some future period of time. At this point, I think you clearly can understand the frustration and the difficulty that staff is experiencing. This is not, although Mr. Chapman is obviously very capable and certainly very diligent, this is not a high level of technical expertise that is possessed by our staff. And at this point, in order to avoid any delay in any action that we could take between now and the next City Council meeting on November 24th, we're asking the City Council's concurrence to increase the City Manager's expenditure authority to address this issue and to deal with it in real time to as much as $100,000. We do not anticipate needing to spend that much or obligate that much within the next 2 weeks, but we do not believe that the $25,000 expenditure authority will absolutely be sufficient to engage the detailed assessment and the potential initial repair efforts that this contractor that we intend to work with that needs to undertake. So I'd like to ask the city attorney to walk you through the procedure for adding an item to the agenda so that you might consider and discuss the recommendation that I've just made. It's not on your agenda, and therefore can't be considered or acted on by you without you taking the unusual step of adding it by emergency action to the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Yes, as the city manager indicated, the Brown Act does allow the city council to put an item on the agenda for discussion at the meeting. There are 2 findings that you need to make, and we need 4 affirmative votes. The first finding is that there's a need for immediate action, and the second finding is that the need for that action arose after the agenda was posted. And I think based on the comments that you've heard from staff, the city council could make both of those findings if they so wish. So if the city council does wish to add this item to the agenda for further discussion right now, then staff would entertain a motion to place it on the agenda, and if there are 4 affirmative votes in favor of that motion, then it would be placed on the agenda for your further discussion.
Okay. Any question? Would someone like to make that motion?
Well, okay, go ahead. Go ahead and make
Make your comment. I was going to.
Well, I just, before we go in, because I'm in favor of it, but I wanted to ask staff, you spoke at the end of your presentation, your report, that the temporary measures, and I think that should be first and foremost what happens, because this can go on, and as much as you're so dedicated and working it out, and the drawbacks every single day, it seems, we got to take care of the neighborhood. And I think with speaking with PG&E, diesel run, floodlights is not going to make it in a neighborhood. So really got to pursue that, secondary connection to the power poles and stuff. So if that's part of that expenditure, and moving forward, that should be the priority.
It is, and as the acting director indicated, there is some design and analysis that's required for that effort. So unfortunately, we can't assure you that we're going to be able to go out there tomorrow or next week and attach wires to a secondary power source, but we believe it's necessary to get started now, so we don't lose additional time in seeking your concurrence and authorization for expenditures that may be necessary to
And
allow
not being
that.
an electrician or being a layperson, I mean, is there another option as far as, even tapping off of a residence, in that allowance, if we got the authority, because of the proximity of certain lights. So, I mean, I don't need an answer, but I would think that we could, again, just look at, some desperate measures here just to, illuminate the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Thank
PG&E is in the audience and has clearly understands what's going on here. As staff has indicated, has been working closely with it, so they would be prepared to answer those types of questions.
Okay.
Michael?
Yeah, so I wanted to make that motion so that we can actually discuss this as an actionable item. So I'd like to make that motion that we add this to the agenda formally.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Motion and second on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
So, so now that it's on the agenda, yeah, I definitely think that we need to do something. We need to have some temporary measures in, because from what I saw in the staff report is that any permanent solution is a long ways off. And I appreciate the complexity of the situation, but in the meantime, I think before we roll out any diesel generators into the neighborhood, we maybe get some input from the neighbors and see if that's something that they would be open to, even if we limit the hours of operation, maybe as long as we have those lights available from, say, from sundown until 10 p.m. or something. Maybe that noise level would be more tolerable. And then start looking into the other solutions, which clearly are going to require a little bit more time. But I've been in the neighborhood, and I know that I walked down one street that had the ground was open there, and there was boards over it. And when it's dark, it's a trip hazard. It's definitely spooky in the area. So anything that we could do to alleviate that, even if it's just strategically placing a few temporary lights out there, I think we should definitely consider that, with of course input from the neighborhood, because we don't want to inconvenience them. We want to help them out.
Anything else?
Through the chair.
Mike, Irene?
Thank you. This is totally, I have no idea if it's viable or not, but have you thought about anything with using solar packs? Solar energy hooked up to something, there's no noise. I mean, there's solar convertible,
If I might just jump in, I think that's what we're going to approve is the authorization to spend the funds to find out what we can do on a temporary basis, first of all, and then on a permanent basis in the long run. So I'm sure they have, I even mentioned it the other day, that maybe we could look at something, but I think we have to give them the opportunity to spend the money to look at all the options, whether they be generators, which probably won't fly, solar tying into the existing poles in the back, do something so that we can get some temporary lighting up there on a remedial basis, even though the remedial is going to be a long time. So I think that's really what it's all about. I don't think we should get into speculation of what we might be able to do tonight. I think we have to actually act on it so we can put the funds out there to get the proper people in place to get this done. So I just throw that out.
We can give you a little bit of information about the solar, and that is something that we would definitely explore further. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, Ted and I discussed the solar, option as well, but, from what we understand, it needs a battery pack, which the pole isn't strong enough to hold both the battery pack and then the solar equipment. So all the poles will need to be changed in order to install the solar.
it was a thought.
Yeah, to add to that, as part of the LED program, we did look into some solar power lighting, and due to our environment with the fog, the battery packs have to be larger than normal in a area that does not have fog, and that requires a larger pole to hold the batteries and the panels up.
Okay.
Thank you for being expansive in your thoughts.
So the next item would be to authorize the manager. Is that correct?
It is, and I just would be clear that I don't anticipate needing up to $100,000. The staff indicated to me earlier today that a comprehensive assessment could cost as much as $50,000. But we need to be able to get going. We have no money budgeted other than a sort of a routine repair allocation in the regular operating budget to do the normal type of street light maintenance and minor repairs. So at this point, we just need some additional allocation and authority to bring this contractor on, and to the extent that we can make some immediate additional repairs or move towards design or a contract for design of the secondary system, we would like to be able to be in a position to do that.
Okay. Someone would like to make that
Through
motion?
the chair,
Ken?
so with that said, and did you mention that because it is an emergency situation that you won't have to go through a bidding process?
We would expect to come back to you. At this point, we're not anticipating construction work that requires competitive bidding. We're thinking of analysis work and repair work immediately. We do anticipate coming back to you with a request once we figure out what direction to go to waive competitive bidding, but we don't feel that we're there right now.
Okay.
Did PG&E want to make a comment?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Scott Hart, Local Government Relations for PG&E to the city of San Bruno. Want to make sure, first of all, I know there was a question before about PG&E's willingness to participate. We are totally on board with continuing what we believe is much improved interactions with the city, and we've heard tonight, and we want to work with you guys on a solution. We totally also empathize with our customers and your residents that are without streetlights right now. We've chased the similar ghost in the machine in other cities with them as well, trying to be partners with them and helping them to find it on their side of the infrastructure or on ours, since it is a shared system. And so I just wanted to, I don't want to belabor the point, but just wanted to let you know we're committed to working with staff on whatever solutions, thinking outside the box, working with them to see what solutions can viably work, that'll provide service, but then also wouldn't create an additional safety concern or anything like that, but want to make sure that we are, and I know that it was mentioned at the last council member, in the past, there were concerns about our responsiveness, and hopefully we have changed the tide on that and have shown our commitment to do so.
You have, and we've been informed by staff that you've been very cooperative, so thank you very much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
As far as I do have our senior manager in charge of our customer group, as well as somebody from our electric operations. I think we'll answer a lot of the questions when we meet with staff, but if there were any general questions that you have before you move forward, I'll be glad to see what we can answer.
Well, all I can say is that this can't be a new problem. I think it's been mentioned that it's happened in other cities. So hopefully there are some measures that we could take on right away, and now that we've got the authority to do it, that doesn't take
Sure.
2 weeks, doesn't take an indefinite amount of time.
I'll commend you on the fact that you're looking beyond that, because in other cases, we basically took the time it took for the cities to work through, changing out, looking and doing, and kind of almost a trial by error in the sense that you're chasing down the different faults. But in this case, you're taking the next step to look at some other potentials. So I will say that you're going above and beyond.
I would just ask, Scott, if you would tell the city council what you told me about the prevalence of this type of circuitry in your service territory statewide. I was very surprised about that.
So it's already been mentioned, this is a very antiquated system, and it was put in pretty much in the 1950s, even though the actual technology dates back to the 1890s. But in our service territory, as you can imagine, all the way from the Oregon border to Bakersfield, we have, I believe, 67 of these loops, 54 of which are in the peninsula. It just so happened that at the time the peninsula was being developed, that was the technology that was being used, and we had a bunch in San Francisco that we're doing a program to remove as well, that we owned completely. It's in this situation in the peninsula where it's shared ownership. And so it's unique in that sense. But yeah, it's not very prevalent throughout the service territory, and it does have a concentration here in the peninsula because of similar development.
Lucky us.
Lucky peninsula, yes.
I appreciate the cooperation. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Action by the city council to authorize additional funds for the manager
So moved.
Second?
to the amount of
100,000, was it?
$100,000.
Not to
is that
exceed.
correct?
Not
Correct.
to exceed 100,000.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Mr. and to the chair,
Yes.
Ted and Jimmy, and Ted, for all the updates and all your trials and doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, I know you've been working lots of hours. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.